The full-frame camera world did not slow down this year. It exploded. And if you blinked, you probably missed how fast everything changed. One moment, Canon was on top, setting the pace, controlling the conversation. The next moment, Sony stepped in quietly and shifted the balance without making any noise. No dramatic event, no flashy marketing stunt, just a camera that arrived with confidence and forced everyone to stop and look again. Because this is not just another camera comparison. This is not Sony versus Canon like we have seen before. This is a turning point, a moment where two companies chase the same creators but take completely different paths to get there. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly which path makes more sense for you. Canon fired the first shot with the EOS R6 Mark III. It came in hot, faster bursts, bigger video numbers, a camera that clearly wanted attention. It was designed to excite creators who move fast, shoot everything, and want freedom. Canon made it clear. This camera was built to feel powerful the moment you pick it up. Then Sony responded. Not weeks later with leaks. Not months later with rumors. Sony answered almost immediately with the A7 V. And Sony did not try to outshout Canon. They did not chase bigger headlines. They did what Sony always does when it is confident. They focused on control, data, and consistency. This is where the story becomes interesting. Both cameras are hybrid monsters. Both are built for photographers who also shoot video. Both target weddings, events, wildlife, content creators, and professionals who want one body that could do everything. But the philosophy behind them could not be more different. Sony builds cameras like instruments. Precise, measured, predictable. Canon builds cameras like tools. Flexible, emotional, forgiving. And that difference shows up everywhere. The first place you see it is the sensor. Sony uses a 33-megapixel full-frame CMOS sensor in the A7 V. It is partially stacked. It does not use a traditional double anti-aliasing filter. That decision alone tells you everything about Sony's priorities. Sony wants clarity. Sony wants micro-detail. Sony wants every pixel to work as hard as possible. Canon answers with a 32-megapixel full-frame sensor in the R6 Mark III. It is not stacked, but it is deeply refined. Canon tuned this sensor for video oversampling, color science, and smooth tonal transitions. Canon is not chasing the sharpest possible pixel. Canon is chasing balance. On paper, 1 megapixel does not matter. In real use, it absolutely does, but not because of the number. It matters because of how the data is handled. Sony's sensor lets more native detail through. Fine lines look sharper. Textures feel more defined. Hair, fabric, architecture, and foliage all show slightly more bite. This is not harsh digital sharpness. It is controlled clarity. It feels intentional. Canon takes the opposite approach. The R6 Mark III produces smoother images straight out of camera. Highlights roll off gently. Skin tones look softer and more natural. Faces look pleasing without work. This is especially noticeable in portraits and people-focused content. Neither approach is wrong, but they serve different creators. If you crop heavily, Sony holds structure better. If you shoot landscapes, studio, or product photography, Sony gives you more detail to work with. If you shoot people, weddings, or documentary work, Canon feels easier and more forgiving. At base ISO, Sony technically wins on pure detail. Not by a massive margin, but enough that experienced shooters will see it. Now let's talk about ISO performance, because this is where the difference becomes clearer. Sony offers a native ISO range from 100 to 51,200, expandable to 204,800. Canon starts at ISO 100 as well, but pushes native ISO to 64,000, expandable to 102,400. On paper, Canon looks stronger. In reality, it is more nuanced. Sony's partially stacked sensor gives it an advantage in readout noise. As ISO climbs, Sony holds detail longer. Noise stays fine and film-like. Color remains stable. At ISO 12,800, both cameras look excellent. At ISO 16,000, Canon still holds color beautifully. Skin tones remain clean. Shadows stay neutral. But once you move past ISO 25600, the balance shifts. Sony keeps structure. Canon begins to soften. Not in a bad way, but enough to notice. 4-night shooters, astrophotography, concerts, and events in terrible lighting, Sony SI. MPLY holds together longer. Canon is still very usable. Very good, in fact. But Sony is more resilient at the extreme end. Then we reach autofocus, and this is where reputations matter. Sony has dominated mirrorless autofocus for years. The A7 V continues that legacy. Real-time tracking, faster readout, improved subject recognition, eyes, faces, animals, birds, partículas. The system feels analytical. It locks on. It stays locked. Canon pushes dual-pixel AF even further. Tracking feels organic, smooth, sticky. When a subject moves toward the camera, Canon feels natural. When lighting changes suddenly, Canon adapts beautifully. For portraits, Canon feels intuitive. You trust it immediately. Sony feels different. Sony feels disciplined, almost mechanical. It does not guess. It does not hesitate. In chaotic scenes, Sony reacts faster. Focus dropouts are rarer. At high burst rates, Sony holds tracking more consistently. For sports and wildlife, Sony pulls ahead. Canon is excellent. Sony is relentless. Burst speed shows the same pattern. Canon is aggressive. 12 frames per second mechanically. Up to 40 frames per second electronically. That is insane speed. Sony offers 10 frames per second mechanically and 30 electronically. Canon wins on numbers. No argument. But speed comes with trade-offs. A non-stack sensor means more rolling shutter. At 40 frames per second, fast motion can bend. Artificial lighting can cause banding. For dance floors, LED lights, fast panning, Canon can show weaknesses. Sony's 30 frames per second feels more controlled. Less distortion. More consistency. The images look uniform. Reliable. Canon gives you the moment. Sony gives you the data. That philosophy becomes even clearer when we talk about video. Sony records 4K up to 120 frames per second. It oversamples from a high-quality region of the sensor, depending on mode. The footage is clean, sharp, predictable. Dynamic range is strong. Colors are neutral. Rolling shutter behavior is consistent. Sony does not chase extreme numbers. Sony chases reliability. Canon goes further, much further. The R6 Mark III records 7K video, not just at low frame rates. It pushes high frame rates as well. Canon then oversamples that 7K down to 4K. The result is stunning. Canon's 4K looks richer, more detailed, more cinematic. Fine textures hold better. There is more flexibility in post. Cropping, reframing, punching in. Canon gives creators room to breathe. Slow motion pushes this advantage even more. Sony's 4K 120 is excellent. Smooth, controlled, professional. Canon's higher frame rate options allow dramatic slow motion that feels expressive. For filmmakers, commercial creators, and travel shooters, Canon offers more creative freedom. This does not mean Sony video looks worse. It does not. Sony video looks clean, professional, neutral. It grades beautifully. It protects highlights. It behaves exactly how you expect it to behave. Again, it comes down to philosophy. Sony builds for control. Canon builds for expression. So which one is better? The honest answer is this. If you want maximum detail, high ISO resilience, bulletproof autofocus under pressure, and predictable performance, the Sony A7 V is the smarter tool. It is a camera you can trust in difficult conditions. It feels like an instrument designed for precision. If you want speed, flexibility, cinematic video, and a forgiving shooting experience, the Canon R6 Mark III is incredibly compelling. It feels alive. It feels creative. It invites experimentation. My personal opinion is simple. Sony made the safer camera. Canon made the more exciting one. Sony focused on long-term reliability. Canon focused on pushing boundaries. Neither company is wrong, but they're no longer chasing the same definition of success. And that is why this comparison matters. Because this is not about megapixels. It is not about frame rates. It is about what kind of creator you are and what kind of camera you want to grow with. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future uploads.